Thanks for calling A1 Travel. It's Jim.
I want to go to Hawaii. Yay! Yay! I want to go to Hawaii.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yay.
I do too.
All right, so late night discussion. Zodiac guessed it. I mean, dude, you always guess it first, so I don't know why I hint at next movies anymore, because Zodiac's just going to come in for the kill, pun intended. 2009's A Perfect Getaway, directed by David Twohy. He's done a lot of things. He actually did Critters 2. He did The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, which is an excellent movie. Then he did all the Riddick films, which it's not really my thing, so I never really got into those. But the thing with this movie is it's fucking excellent. I have always adored this movie since I first saw it. It is criminally underrated, underseen, under-talked about. I feel like it's getting more love and recognition over the years. Like, as time's going on, it is getting more of a reappraisal, but I've loved it since I first saw this. Now, there's going to be a lot of talk about twists in films, and the twist in this one, obviously. So, if you haven't seen this movie, we have Timothy Olyphant, who I absolutely adore. He is a national treasure. I love everything about him and everything I've ever seen him in. And we have Milla Jovovich, who I adore her and everything. Steve Zahn is excellent in this movie, and I love him in general. And what is it, Keely Sanchez? She's adorable in this. She plays such a cute character, but she kicks some ass, man, in this movie. So the cast is phenomenal in this movie. We have Chris Hemsworth too, which is funny because Triangle I just watched had the other Hemsworth in it. He's fine. He's a very obvious red herring here, but if you haven't seen A Perfect Getaway, basically this couple, Cydney and Cliff, end up going on their honeymoon in Hawaii, and there is a murder that occurs on one of the islands that they were on, and they start to suspect this couple that they meet, played by Timothy Olyphant and Sanchez, and they start to suspect them that they might be the killers. And then there's a very obvious red herring, like I said, thrown in there with Hemsworth and his girl, that they might be the killers. That's all you need to know going into it if you've never seen it, but I already mentioned twists. The best way to see this movie is to know nothing about it. So if you haven't seen it, and you've seen up to this, I mean, you're fucked already. But when I saw this movie, I knew nothing about it whatsoever. I just saw Timothy Olyphant and Steve Zahn in the cast, and I said, all right, perfect. Like, let's do it. Watched it. I loved the twist. So we're going to talk spoilers now, and I'm going to start with the twist, just to show how excellent the writing is in this movie. That this is a twist that you watch for the first time. And I don't remember at what point in the movie I realized that Cliff and Cydney are the killers. Pretty sure it's like around where they find the teeth in Chris Hemsworth's character's backpack or whatever. Somewhere around there I started suspecting them, but I don't remember. But the first time you watch this, and like I said, if you go in blind, you're not even looking for a twist, and maybe that's why it works so well for people who didn't know anything about this movie. I haven't even seen the trailer for this since, like, the trailer was on TV back in the day. So I don't even know how much it lets on or gives away in the trailer. I'd be interested to check that out after this. You get surprised by the twist, and then when you rewatch this, it all makes perfect sense. Like, there's no real cheats here or anything, and that's why in the last video I brought up High Tension, or Switchblade Romance, whatever you know it as. The twist in that movie is great on the first watch. It makes no sense at all on any rewatch afterwards, and it severely brings that movie down for me. But the twist just makes absolutely no sense any way you try to look at it, or try to defend it, or try to dissect it. It's lazy. It's just like, oh, here's a twist for them at the end. Oh, that's cool, but then we didn't put any thought into the rest of the movie and how it works with that revelation at the end for when you rewatch this and re-experience the story. This movie does it excellently. Just like another example, The Sixth Sense. After you find out Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time, he was dead, when you rewatch that movie, it all makes complete sense, and nothing breaks the rules of what actually occurred in that movie, that he was dead the whole time. That's how it is in this film. So, I got a lot to say about this movie. I got a lot of love for this movie. So let's take A perfect getaway together. Alright, so we know that Cliff, aka Rocky, is what we assume his real name is, but who knows if that's even his real name. And I forget if we get her quote-unquote real name. Cydney's in this. Not sure, but it doesn't really matter. They are just serial killers who are trying to take on the lives of their victims. And they learn everything about them and their traits, their characteristics, and then they kill them, and then they take over their lives. Also seems that they're both like meth addicts, so that's never a good thing on top of serial killing. And we also see more like near the end of the movie that Cydney, I'm just calling her Cydney and Cliff for the rest of this movie, but we see near the end of the movie that Cydney is kind of like a slave to Rocky. That like, yeah, she's helping him and doing this, and it seems like she's enjoying it to an extent, but she just wants like love from him that he never really is able to give her. So playing newlyweds in these new fake lives is her way of maybe possibly she can get what she always wanted, which of course she doesn't. So Rocky's kind of the leading force here. And while they're on their honeymoon here and they meet Nick and Gina, they start doing the same thing. They start like researching them, and he keeps letting Nick talk and tell his wild stories so he can learn about him, so when they kill them, they can take over their lives and identities. It's a great concept. Now, one thing to note, there is a director's cut of this. I haven't seen it in years, and I don't really like it compared to just the regular theatrical version, because even in the beginning here, they like separate the wedding footage from the dialogue with Cliff and Cydney at the very beginning when they're driving. It doesn't give the same vibe and feel that the theatrical cut does by intersplicing them. But we see wedding footage of supposedly their wedding. We know it's not. It's their last victims. And in between that, we see them driving, and they're making a wedding video like most and pretty much all newlyweds would. And even with them saying, like, yes, Cliff Anderson of wherever he's from and stuff, and they're giving background and stuff, it makes sense because they're rehearsing. They're rehearsing this new identity that they've stolen from these people that they killed. But when you're watching it or rewatching it, it makes total sense because they're newlyweds. So of course they're going to be saying cheesy shit like that into a camera, like their honeymoon video. You see this throughout the whole movie. There's such great attention to detail here, and just the writing, like I said, is fantastic in this movie. Even when he starts telling a story and she says to him, like, try being a little less dramatic or something like that. Again, it's all a rehearsal. So they're driving down a road in Hawaii, going to some more desolate islands and stuff that they can hike on. And they see Hemsworth's character, Kale, I think it is, and his girl. And they ask for a ride. And just another great play on words, which is just excellently used throughout this whole film. Just double meanings and everything like that. When they show a picture of them getting married to Cindy and Cliff, Cliff looks at it and he says, suitable for framing. Geeky for his character, you know, that you could frame the picture, but he's looking at her and saying that these two motherfuckers, we could frame them for the murders. Like, all of this is great. So Cliff and Cydney end up taking a helicopter onto one of the islands, and just watching this, I really miss these type of movies from like the 2000s, early 2010s. These like really good thrillers that we would get, and that would do fairly well at the box office every now and then. I feel like we do not get quality thriller films like this anywhere near as often as back in the 2000s, but I digress. The cinematography in this film is excellent. Everything looks absolutely stunning. Everything in Hawaii here, you just want to go there. The title's awesome too, as it's a perfect getaway, you know, going on a vacation, on a honeymoon like this. And it's also a perfect getaway. To get away with being a fucking murderer is to take the identity of your victim and pretend that you're them. I love when, I guess they're renting the car, the big dude, it looks like E. Honda from the Street Fighter movie in the 90s. I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, that was like, what, 30 years ago, right? That actor? I don't know if it's the same guy, and I swear it's not just because it's a big Hawaiian dude, but looks like E. Honda. And Cydney comes up to Cliff and says, like, come on, babe, like, I'll give you a BJ in the car again. He has such a great reaction to it. It's like he's heard this a million times because mad people do their honeymoons in Hawaii. And then we see as they are driving off that there's a newspaper on the ground that says that a couple was butchered in Honolulu, kickstarting the murder mystery. So they start hiking on a trail and they run into Nick, who I could spend probably 20 minutes just gushing over Olyphant's performance in this movie and just him in general. So I'm going to spare you guys that. But his whole performance is just excellent in this film. Like, it's just somebody that I never get tired of seeing act on screen. And one of my favorite performances by him is in the show Santa Clarita Diet with Drew Barrymore. That was shamefully canceled after that cliffhanger third season, which Netflix just loves canceling their shows after the third season unless it's Stranger Things. But his performance as Joel in that show, comedic gold. The delivery of his lines, everything is hilarity at just its peak in that show. If you haven't seen Santa Clarita Diet, go check that show out. It's still on Netflix. Here's a thought. They start talking and getting to know each other, and Nick starts telling some of his wild stories that he calls himself the American Jedi, which is just brilliant. And Cliff starts giving his rehearsed backstory that he's a screenplay writer, or they just say screenwriter. I love the dynamic between Steve Zahn and Timothy Olyphant in this movie too. And all of them together, like, man, this movie is so underrated, it's not even funny. I'm glad I picked Triangle and this to watch as like kind of back to back tonight, because both films are criminally underrated. So again, if you haven't seen them, go fucking watch them. Stop watching this like mid-tier channel. And I love all the film talk in this, since he took over this last victim's life of being a screenwriter. He has to explain his backstory in his life as a screenwriter, which leads to some great dialogue between Nick and Cliff. I always want to say Rocky, but you know who I mean. With Nick saying that he took like a film writing class, and I get like the basics, there's 3 acts, and you have to have a red snapper. He calls it a red snapper instead of red herring, and they go back and forth with that for a bit, and he's pretty sure it's red snapper. Oh, that's great. That's why the red herring with Kale and his girl, I never remember her name, is so obvious. Because it's just supposed to make you think, like, yeah, it's so heavily trying to make you think it's these people. You know it's not these people. And then you think that even more so, and that's probably why a lot of people around the section of the movie where the teeth are found in Kale's bag is where they start thinking, all right, I think it might be, you know, the couple we're following. And Nick and Gina are the ones that are in danger right around that part of the movie. But it brings up a point. How long do they wait between changing lives? You know what I mean? Do they, because it seems like they're trying to move on to taking Nick's life and Gina's life very swiftly after just taking the last victim's life. So I know at the end, like, he says that he wants to live 100 lives or something like that, and Cydney's going to be the one to help him do that. I mean, it seems like he can take a lot more lives than that if he's going, like, every few days. They're killing new people. He could exceed 100, like, in a few months. But regardless, but I wonder if it's just very spontaneous, because they are very calculated, like, for sure. And they are very well rehearsed, as we've said. But it's interesting to try to think what's going on in Cliff's mind, or Rocky's mind, whatever. And, like, he's instantly trying to do his research and gather everything that he can on Nick's life and his personality and stuff. Nick says, like, outstanding, like 5, 6, 7 times in this movie. And then later in the movie, when we get the reveal, Rocky says outstanding and starts adopting that term from him. So he's already trying to take his traits so he can kill them. So again, like, are they going to do this 2 days from now? If they didn't get stopped at the end? I don't know. You give me the answers. It's very interesting, though. This is funny, because then they end up meeting these, like, girls in their 20s. They don't look like teenagers, but in their 20s or so. One looks like a real bimbo, and they have no reaction when they tell them the news that they got a call from their father or something like that saying that there was a murder of a couple in Honolulu. They don't seem fazed at all, these girls. But then Nick says it's kind of like that movie, you know, Natural Born Killers, which, what a phenomenal movie that is. Are you kidding? I want to do that soon, like very, very soon. Masterpiece of a movie. But then when he mentions that, the girl freaks out and says, oh my God, that movie freaked me out. The movie, the mere mention of the film got her more freaked out than the fact that there was a murder on an island close by and the killers are at loose. I don't know. Obviously, all the scenes when Cliff and Cydney are talking to each other, that's where it kind of can fall apart a bit, but it doesn't. If you were a prolific, meticulous group of serial killers like this, that really researches and just observes character traits and everything about who they're about to kill and take their lives over and identities, it's pretty much common ground that you're going to be on with each other. If you need to have a private conversation, you're around people or they're in, you know, earshot, to talk in the third person and not talk about yourselves. So when Cliff is looking at the phone and he sees the picture of the security cam that they got of the killers, they're talking, yeah, but they're saying it could be anybody. Like, does it look familiar to you? Like he's talking down to her. We know it's because it's them and he's worried. But of course they're going to be talking like that because they're within earshot of people. So it doesn't break any of the rules for the twist at all. Actually, I'll just say this. I have so much faith in the writing here and the handful of times I've seen this movie and really tried to find a hole in the twist. I can't. So I challenge anyone. If anybody thinks that there's a part of this movie that breaks the twist in some way, that doesn't make sense, and it's only there really for the audience, let me know in the comments, because I'd really like to hear it and see if I can find a way to make it make sense with the twist, because I think this all fits together perfectly. I really like how when Cliff sees Kale and the girlfriend walking on the beach, he takes his glasses off to see them because he probably doesn't wear glasses. The real Cliff wore glasses, so that's why he's wearing them. Like, that's a great little detail too. Then we get introduced to Nick's girlfriend, Gina, who is naked on a raft in the lake here, and she is just stunning. Like, I don't think anyone can deny that. And she's, like I said, a great character and a complete badass. It's not like she's in peril and Nick has to be the one to come and save her. She's trying to save Nick at the end of this, and he's an established American Jedi. I love how she repeats a few times, he is really hard to kill. Her accent is great too. I love her accent, and she's just adorable in this. In the flashback at the end, when they show her in the ring shop and she's pointing it out, like this one, and this one, and he's outside and he's like pretending that he's not paying attention, and then she has the conversation with the clerk saying like, no, we play this game, he's pretending, and then he's going to come back in here, say he forgot something, and that's exactly what he does. I love their whole fucking romance in this movie. It's adorable. Like, it really is. The writing is just the strongest part of this entire film. Like, all around. The script, the plot, the writing for the dialogue, the writing for the characters, and I just can't stress enough how gorgeous some of these scenic shots are. Like, I want to go to Hawaii. And just how Cliff, or Rocky, takes the traits from Nick, like with him repeating outstanding multiple times and Cliff stealing that from him. We have the whoop-de-ta from Gina that we hear Cydney say, I think, 1 or 2 times at the end of the movie. And just the stories that are true that Nick tells are just excellent. so good hearing him tell these stories of how he got shot in the head and now he has a titanium plate and stuff like Chop Top, and how he survived the plane crash. He was the only survivor. He saw it from the inside. Like, all his stories, anything to do with him talking is just... I told you I'm going to gush over it. I really like the scene when Gina and Cydney are talking, and especially on rewatch, when she starts talking about, and she says Rocky. So I'm assuming that's his real name, because she's saying this happened years and years ago when she first met him, and the thing that she said that she would never tell, and he would kill her, and says that this is the first time that she ever told anybody, to Gina. So you see her break through, like her real personality. And this is one of the few times that you see it until the end of the movie. And I just really like all that dialogue between them. I love when they go hunting in the woods and he starts fucking with Cliff. He's going like, and he stops. And then he goes again. He stops. And then he does it like quicker and makes him stop, and then he goes like, so funny. And then again, the private conversation with Cydney and Cliff in the tent. All of it does make sense. They're talking in the third person. You could see Gina right outside the tent, so she's within earshot. Like, maybe she wouldn't hear them, but just in case, you'd want to be super extra careful, right? If you were a serial killer. Then the next morning, Rocky, Cliff, what the fuck ever, he wakes up to the helicopter sound, and he wakes up in like a real hurry, which hints that, he's a killer would do that. Like, if he's a serial killer, he's like been checking the phone and stuff in the news to see if there's anything that can link them to these murders. So you wake up to helicopters, that's a bad sound. You don't want to hear that in the morning. So Cale and the girlfriend get picked up for the murders after finding the teeth of the victims in Cale's pouch that Rocky planted. Then they go on, just the four of them. And by this point, most people are picking up on they're the killers. Cliff ends up going on a kayak ride to the caves with Nick, and I love how it calls back to earlier conversation that they had together when they're drinking the tequila? I think it's tequila, right? With the scorpion in it. And Nick asks, I wonder if they kill them first before putting them in there, or if they go in and then they drown. And he goes into the cave alive, and he goes in to be killed, and it answers that question. Now then we get officially the reveal, and Gina puts it together when she looks at their camera, and they threw the tape out, they show in the flashback right after this, but they didn't throw the memory card out, so she puts it in and sees a picture of the real Cydney and Cliff, and she tries to get a hold of Nick and yells for him, and he doesn't hear. He says, I'll be back, and his whole plan is to propose to her. So, I guess that's what blinded him. He's such an intelligent guy, and he's an American Jedi, too. So I guess his love for her blinded him to not really think that these people are any type of threat to him in any sort of way, and he was wrong. The way it goes into the flashback and shows them rehearsing and framing Cale and his girlfriend. I feel bad I don't know her name. All of that is handled so well. I love the cut from when, and I love the little fact that Nick turns his head when he goes to shoot him, so he knows that it might possibly hit his plate and save his life, and right when he fires the gun is when it cuts to the flashback. Then we see a flashback of them on the beach before they go kayaking, Nick and Rocky, and they're smoking meth. So, I don't know how easy it is to get meth in Hawaii, or if they brought it with them. I'm sure they're not worried about bringing drugs on an airplane. They're fucking serial killers. They got more things to worry about, right? But I love the scene with the two guys that Gina runs into when she's getting chased by Rocky. And he gives this whole bullshit story on the fly that it's a friend of his, but she's been hitting like meth on the pipe real hard, and that I'm just trying to get her safe. And look, here's little packages. I've been finding them throughout the trail. And she's screaming that he's lying. He's trying to kill my boyfriend. And for some reason, like, they're holding her back and stuff. I don't know. But then the guy ends up pointing out and saying, I just don't understand how come her pupils look normal and yours are the size of olives? And he says, "You guys, that was a great story," and just takes the gun out and shoots both of them. Great scene there, too. Then we have Gina near the cliff, and she gets cell service. And she thinks she's talking to like an Indian tech person, which is that. I mean, that's kind of stupid. What, he's talking in that accent is what we're supposed to believe? That's Rocky while climbing a cliff. And he's talking without going like huffing and puffing or being out of breath in the slightest. I mean, none of that makes sense at all, but whatever. Cool that she's floating out on the canoe and she's giving him, direction, saying almost a little more right there, grabs her and stuff, but that whole thing being an Indian, like, tech company and stuff, come on, that's stupid as hell. Really cool effects, though, too, in this movie near the end, when she gets stabbed in the leg and then she slowly pulls the blade out. That looks really cool. When Rocky gets his hand split, like Jason Part 4 style, that looks really great, too. Then we just have an amazing performance in this scene by Steve Zahn, where he's just on his knees and Nick has the gun to his head and the helicopter's flying with Cydney and they're trying to say, tell us which one is the killer, who's the one doing this so we can shoot the right person. And she ends up doing the right thing and saying that, the guy who's about to pick the gun up. But the whole performance by Zahn there is phenomenal. Just him, he's so methed out. He's so crazy in the head and psychotic, and he really believes all this shit. He's like, just name a date and a place and I'll be there 1 year from now. Like, you can kill me now and I'll still keep coming back. All of that is just brilliant from him. And he ends up being killed. Who knows what happens to her? I'm sure she goes to prison forever, right? I mean, unless she just tries pleading or something by saying everything that they've done and that it was all Rocky and he was keeping her prisoner in some way. But they leave that open. And then Gina and Nick are safe and they don't want no honeymoon. What a fantastic film. What an underrated movie. I can't stress that enough if I haven't enough in this video already. 2009's A Perfect Getaway. Awesome. Alright guys, hope everyone's having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody. So, let's dive deep into A Perfect Getaway. Plus they're methed out, plus they're damn meth heads, plus they're also meth addicts. So I mean, that doesn't ever add anything positive to an already evil situation. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous in this movie. Everything looks totally ass to get there.
I want to go to Hawaii. Yay! Yay! I want to go to Hawaii.